Daniel opened the letter with hands that trembled like leaves in a storm. His breath snagged as if the air itself resisted him. The paper declared his name cleared after years of suspicion, but his chest burned with disbelief. He whispered, "After all this time, they finally admit it." Yet the relief felt like a bruise pressed too hard. His mind leapt to the community meeting tonight where his name was still poison. Freedom dangled close, but reputation stood locked behind their wary stares. The letter slipped from his grip and fluttered to the floor, landing near the scuffed diploma he never dared hang. He thought of his daughter, Emma, who had stopped calling after the trial. He said aloud, "If I show up tonight, maybe I can show her I'm not what they think." His voice cracked under the weight of that promise. The room around him felt smaller, the ticking clock louder, the future tighter. Daniel understood that one wrong word tonight could undo the paper's truth. The stakes were plain: dignity regained or shame cemented forever. Daniel sat in silence, staring at the letter as if it might rewrite itself. His chest rose and fell with heavy rhythm. He thought of the meeting hall, where faces waited like judges. He said, "They will clap politely, then remind me I am still stained." The room felt like a cage of memory. He recalled walking past whispered voices in town, each glance burning like a brand. He pressed his palm against the table, steadying himself, whispering, "I am not what I was accused of." The words felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. The letter proved innocence, but it could not erase scars carved deep into reputation. His daughter's silence echoed louder than any verdict. He needed tonight not just to clear his name, but to reclaim the right to stand in his own skin. His heart beat like a countdown, each second daring him to rise. He dressed with deliberate care, pulling on a clean shirt, though the collar was frayed. He muttered, "They'll judge every wrinkle, every glance." The mirror reflected a man older than his years. Shadows under his eyes whispered of sleepless nights. He straightened his shoulders, forcing strength he barely felt. Emma's picture flashed in his mind. He said softly, "If she sees me standing there, maybe she'll believe again." The room seemed to push him toward the door, yet his legs trembled with doubt. His name had been cleared on paper, but names spoken in the hall tonight carried weight heavier than ink. The storm followed him outside, rain pelting down as if the sky echoed his turmoil. The street glistened under flickering lamps. He pulled his coat tight and said under breath, "They expect me to crawl, but I'll walk in standing tall." Each step splashed water, soaking his shoes. His face hardened against the cold, yet his hands shook in his pockets. The town's familiar buildings loomed, every brick holding memory of accusation. He felt the eyes of ghosts lingering in shadows. The hall's lights glowed ahead, sharp against the rain, promising both judgment and possibility. Daniel reached the community hall doors, rain dripping from his coat. He stood still, chest pounding. The muffled voices inside carried like a low hum of judgment. He whispered, "One step and I'd change everything." His hand hovered over the handle, trembling as though fate resisted. He imagined Emma sitting somewhere in the back, deciding if her father was worthy of trust again. His pulse thudded louder than the storm. He clenched his jaw and said, "This is the only chance I'll get." Then, with resolve cracking but unbroken, he pushed the door open. Daniel stepped into the hall, the sudden warmth clashing with the storm he carried inside. Rows of folding chairs faced the front where elders sat like carved stone. Whispers rippled across the room, and though no one spoke his name, every glance cut deeper than words. He forced a breath, whispering, "They want proof, not apologies." His eyes searched for Emma, wondering if she was hidden among the faces, but he found only shadows of doubt. A man in the corner, Pastor James, nodded slowly, the single gesture carrying more weight than silence could. Daniel steadied himself, clutching the back of a chair. His mind replayed the moment the letter declared him innocent, but the sound of it now seemed hollow. What mattered here was not paper, but people. His chest ached with the knowledge that truth meant little without trust. He said softly, "I will not run." The hall hushed, waiting. He took his seat near the front, the weight of eyes pressing harder than chains. Emma was not there, and that absence hollowed him deeper. A voice broke the silence. Mrs. Carter, gray-haired and stern, said, "Some truths do not erase memories." Daniel swallowed hard, staring down at his clenched fists. He whispered, "Memories hold me prisoner." Pastor James leaned forward, speaking steady. The letter clears him. "The question is, will we?" The crowd murmured, unease rolling like thunder. Daniel wanted to shout that he had paid in years of lost time, but instead he let silence stretch. The hall felt suffocating, the air heavy with judgment and faint possibility. He thought of Emma again, the way she avoided his calls. If he failed here, he would fail her forever. His chest burned with urgency. Tonight was not about convincing all but showing one. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, memory dragging him back to the day of his arrest. The flash of police lights, the slam of the door, Emma's small voice crying "Daddy," pierced him still. He pressed his palms together, whispering, "Never again." The wound that shaped him was not guilt, but the fracture of trust. He would not allow his daughter to inherit his shame. Pastor James' voice cut through his thoughts. "Tell them what you stand for now." Daniel rose slowly, knees weak, heart fierce. He said, "I am not asking you to forget. I am asking you to see me for who I am today." His words trembled, but truth clung to every syllable. The crowd shifted uneasily, the weight of years pressing against a single fragile moment. The air thickened as murmurs swelled. Mr. Ellis, tall and sharp-eyed, said, "Words are easy when the damage is done." Daniel's jaw tightened, his heart hammering, yet he answered, "I will spend the rest of my life proving it was not just words." A woman near the back, Mrs. Carter, again muttered, "Promises are cheap." The hall tilted between hostility and hesitation. Pastor James lifted his hand, steadying the room with a calm presence. He said firmly, "Redemption is measured by what comes after, not before." Daniel exhaled slowly, shoulders lowering, his mind echoing Emma's absence. He whispered under breath, "I want the right to show up again." That simple truth cost more than any defense. The silence that followed was sharp as glass. Daniel sat again, breath ragged, eyes stinging. He thought of Emma's laughter before suspicion tore their lives apart. He clenched the armrest, whispering, "If she sees me fight for dignity, maybe she'll forgive." Community's eyes remained fixed, some softened, others sharpened. Pastor James nodded toward him, a silent anchor of belief. Daniel leaned back, exhausted yet unyielding. The hall was not a courtroom, but it held the same weight. His freedom was written on paper, but tonight was about dignity, about the right to look his daughter in the eye again. He whispered, "This is the price. I will pay it." Outside, thunder cracked like a gavel, and inside, the stillness grew heavy with unfinished judgment. The meeting dragged forward, questions flying like arrows cloaked in courtesy. A man near the back asked, "What work will you do now that your record is cleared?" Daniel swallowed, hands tightening on his knees. He said, "I'll work where I'm allowed. Prove with hours what words can't." Laughter cracked from a corner, cruel and thin. He felt sweat bead at his temples, each whisper carrying more weight than the last. Bills were waiting at home, reminders of doors that stayed shut. He thought of the job interview missed because no one would risk hiring him. His pride burned as he admitted aloud, "I'll start at the bottom if that's what it takes." The silence that followed was heavier than any judgment. A woman stood, Mrs. Alvarez, her arms crossed, voice sharp. She said, "We don't forget nights of fear because of a paper." Daniel lifted his eyes, voice steady, though heart shook. "I don't ask you to forget," he said. "I ask you to see me work for better." Murmurs spread, some skeptical, some thoughtful. Pastor James placed a hand on the table, speaking with calm weight. This man lost years of his life to suspicion. If he chooses service, it benefits us all. Daniel felt both shielded and exposed, knowing every ally came at a price. He thought, even his help will test me. The hall brimmed with friction, each face reflecting doubt like mirrors he could not escape. The night tightened further when an old friend appeared, Marcus, leaning against the wall with sly grin. Marcus said, "You don't need them. I've got work that pays fast." Daniel's stomach knotted, memories flashing of shortcuts that ruined him before. He answered through clenched teeth, "I won't walk that path again." Marcus smirked, shaking his head. "You'll starve waiting for their forgiveness." The offer lingered like poison, tempting and bitter. Daniel's chest burned as he whispered, "Better hunger than chains again." Pastor James watched silently, his eyes measuring Daniel's resolve. The room seemed to tilt. One step wrong and everything would collapse. The tension cracked further when Mr. Ellis rose again, papers in hand. He said, "A cleared name doesn't erase broken trust. I've got reports here proving the damage was real." Daniel's throat tightened, words caught. He forced himself to answer, "I can't rewrite the past, but I can repair what I can reach." The hall leaned in closer, every breath waiting. Pastor James interjected, "Let us not confuse harm with intent. The system failed him too." Daniel stood taller, shoulders back though heart shook. He whispered to himself, "I will not bend, not this time." The crowd buzzed with conflict, suspicion pressing against the fragile wall of hope he tried to build. By night's end, Daniel felt drained, his body sagging but spirit unbroken. He whispered, "They won't give it easy. I'll earn it drop by drop." Pastor James met his eyes, saying quietly, "Consistency wins what speeches can't." The hall grew restless, debate swirling like a storm refusing to break. Daniel knew he had shifted nothing yet, but he had not surrendered either. He thought of Emma again, her trust not yet lost forever, but waiting. The cost of progress had grown clear. Every step forward would bleed him, but still he stood. His second chance was no gift, it was a gauntlet. The hall grew restless, voices rising like sparks. Marcus stepped forward, his grin fading into something sharper. He said, "They don't know I tried to cover for you once." The room stilled, breaths caught. Daniel's heart slammed, words snagged. Marcus continued, "I lied back then thinking I was saving you. But lies have teeth, and they bit both of us." Daniel shook his head, whispering, "You twisted the truth, not me." Marcus' voice carried, "I carried blame for you once. Don't forget it." The revelation cracked the hall's foundation. Daniel's innocence finally written, now tangled in Marcus' confession. Trust tilted, truth bent, and Daniel felt the weight of a debt he never asked for. Gasps filled the hall. Mrs. Carter hissed, "So one lie hid another?" Pastor James raised his voice, steady but firm, "The truth must stand alone." Daniel's chest burned, whispering, "I never asked him to lie." Marcus smirked bitterly, "But you lived off it." The accusation cut deeper than steel. Daniel's breath shook, his voice breaking. "I wanted justice, not favors." The hall swirled with doubt, whispers tearing at him. He thought of Emma again, her memory of police sirens, her silence since. If she believed Marcus' words, she might think her father's freedom was stolen, not earned. That thought broke him more than chains ever did. Daniel's knees nearly buckled, but he steadied himself with raw resolve. He said, "I'd rather lose everything than build my life on another man's lie." The words cracked through the noise like thunder. Marcus narrowed his eyes, muttering, "You'll regret saying that." Pastor James rose, his voice carrying, "This confession shows the rot was never his making." Daniel's chest heaved, his dignity scraped raw but unbroken. The townspeople leaned closer, measuring each word as if it weighed more than the letter itself. He whispered to himself, "This is the cost, truth even if it wounds." And the wound tonight bled openly. The room erupted in divided voices, some demanding Daniel step down, others calling Marcus corrupt. Mr. Ellis shouted, "Both truths stain this hall." Daniel raised his hand, voice loud enough to pierce, "I stand on my own name, not his shadow." His chest quaked, but his words did not bend. Marcus sneered, Then you're alone. Daniel whispered, better alone with truth than bound by your lies. The words silenced part of the crowd, their eyes caught by his refusal. For the first time, a few nodded slowly. A fragile crack appeared in the wall of doubt, small but real. When the noise faded, Pastor James said, "What matters now is not who lied before, but who chooses truth today." Daniel stood taller, though his face carried exhaustion like armor. He said, "Then let it be known. I owe no debt to deception. Every step I take will be mine." The crowd simmered, torn between old scars and new proof. Marcus turned away, muttering, "You'll fall without me." Daniel's heart thundered, whispering to himself, "If falling means standing honest, then I'll fall." The hall shifted. Trust was not won, but suspicion cracked. His second chance would not be applause. It would be endurance. The storm eased, but the room held its weather. Daniel rose and felt silence pull tight. He said, "I will tell what I never told." His pulse hammered like a fist on a locked door. He stared at the elders, then at the back row where absence felt like Emma. He said, "On the night they accused me, I lied about where I was." Murmurs snapped like twigs. He breathed in slow and did not flinch. "I was near Ellis Hardware, not at home," he said. Shame stung, sharp and clean. "I was not stealing," he added. "I was picking up a bag I left when I worked there." He let the words stand without makeup. "I hid that truth because fear felt safer than honesty," he said. The hall inhaled as one body, waiting for the cut that would not clot. Daniel said, "Tonight, I pay for that lie with the whole truth." Mr. Ellis rose, papers twitching like wings. He said, "Footage caught a shadow near my door." Daniel nodded once. "That was me," he said. "I told no one because I feared it looked like guilt." The words thudded like stones. Pastor James watched, face firm as a keel. Daniel said, "The bag had my initials burned into the leather. I took it back. I left a note under the mat. I kept a copy." He unfolded a thin creased slip and held it up. Doubt shifted in seats like restless feet. Mrs. Carter whispered, "Truth late is still late." Daniel met her eyes. "Then let it arrive with interest," he said. "I will work off the doubt I earned by hiding." Every syllable cost something he did not plan to keep. Marcus pushed off the wall, voice slick. He said, "You think confession buys you a ticket?" Daniel faced him square. "No," he said. "It buys me a mirror I can live with." Marcus laughed, low and tired. "Take my offer," he said. "Skip the grind. Eat tonight." Daniel's stomach answered with a hollow ache. He said, "Hunger is not the worst pain in this room." The crowd felt the line and went quiet. Pastor James said, "What you do now marks the road behind you." Daniel turned to the elders. "I will repair Ellis's trust with ours," he said. "And I will sign a public statement about my lie." The choice locked in his chest like a key turned hard. There would be no soft undoing. The elders conferred, whispers like dry leaves. Mr. Ellis cleared his throat. He said, "You will log 40 hours of service for repairs and inventory." Daniel nodded, breath taut with relief and fear. Mrs. Carter said, "And you will speak to the youth group about fear and truth." Daniel answered, "Yes." The word landed like a vow. Pastor James said, "Let us record this agreement now." Pens scraped. Marcus shook his head, muttering, "You trade years for pennies." Daniel said, "Pennies build a ledger." The hall felt different, not kind, but exact. He could feel the door closing on shortcuts. He could feel another door open where work waits in stacks. A cough from the back turned heads. Emma stood by the wall, rain still in her hair. Daniel's breath faltered. She said, "Did you lie to me too?" He swallowed hard. "Yes," he said. "I told you I was home because I needed you to feel safe." She stared, hurt and bright. "And now?" He said, "Now, I will earn safety by being seen as I am." The hall thinned to just them. Pastor James lowered his gaze, granting a small privacy inside a public room. Emma said, then keep saying it out loud. Daniel nodded. I will, he said, even when it costs me. She did not smile, but she did not leave. The choice closed behind him like a door that locks from the inside. Another door, heavier, opened ahead. The hall emptied slowly, chairs scraping against the floor, voices fading into rain outside. Daniel lingered, body heavy yet lighter than before. He whispered, "It isn't over, but it has begun." Pastor James placed a steady hand on his shoulder, saying, "The hardest part is not winning tonight, it is waking tomorrow and keeping steady." Daniel nodded, eyes burning with fatigue. Emma waited by the door, not leaving, not approaching, simply present. That presence felt like breath returned after drowning. He said softly to himself, "Even silence can be mercy if it stays." The echo of thunder outside matched the echo in his chest. The next morning, Daniel rose before dawn, pulling on worn boots. He whispered, 40 hours begins with one. The streets smelled of rain's aftertaste, the town still asleep. At Ellis Hardware, he pushed open the door, greeted by the clang of metal and dust of old wood. Mr. Ellis glanced up, arms crossed, voice clipped. "You're early." Daniel answered, "I'll be here every time." The work waited in stacks of broken shelves and scattered tools. He felt both humiliation and relief pressing his chest. With each lifted board and swept floor, he thought, "This is how I rewrite my name." Hours passed, sweat staining his shirt, muscles aching from labor. Mr. Ellis gave him a list, voice firm but not cruel. "Inventory, every bolt, don't miss a count." Daniel nodded, shoulders sore yet steady. He whispered, "Every piece matters." His mind drifted to Emma, wondering if she would believe this work was real proof. Each item checked was like stitching a tear too long ignored. His back burned, but he kept moving. By midday, Mr. Ellis said, "Didn't think you'd last past an hour." Daniel met his eyes, answering, "I didn't think I'd survive years, but I did." That truth left Ellis silent. That evening, Daniel sat across from Pastor James in the church office. The desk lamp cast long shadows, the storm outside replaced by stillness. James said, "Work shows faith, but faith also demands truth at home." Daniel lowered his gaze. "Emma deserves more than walls of silence," he admitted. The pastor leaned forward, voice low. "She asked me today if change can outlast suspicion. I told her only you can answer that." Daniel clenched his jaw, whispering, "Then I must." The clock ticked heavy in the room, each second daring him to rise to his word. Late at night, Daniel stood outside his small house, rainwater dripping from eaves, the air cool with after-storm calm. Emma sat on the porch steps, hoodie drawn tight, eyes uncertain. Daniel's throat tightened. He said, "I lied once to keep you safe. I won't again." She didn't speak, but her eyes held questions deeper than words. He stepped closer, careful, voice trembling. "I can't undo the nights you cried. I can only show you who I am now." She nodded slightly, not forgiveness, not rejection, but a beginning. Daniel breathed, chest heavy yet unchained. For the first time, the silence felt like ground he could stand on. Morning light poured across Ellis Hardware as Daniel stacked the last repaired shelf. He said, 40 hours, honest and counted." Mr. Ellis checked the ledger, his face unreadable but less hard. He said, "You showed up early and left late." Daniel felt a knot loosen that he had carried for years. He whispered, "I will keep showing up." A couple entered, and their eyes flicked past him without flinching. It felt small, and it felt vast. Mr. Ellis slid a receipt across the counter. He said, "Keep this copy of your hours." Daniel nodded, tucking it away like a seed. That evening, folding chairs faced the church basement stage where Daniel stood with a shaky paper. Teens murmured, hoodies and restless feet. He said, "Fear made me lie, truth makes me work." The room quieted by degrees. Pastor James sat off to the side, hands folded, eyes kind but strict. Daniel said, If you are scared, speak it aloud before it speaks for you. A boy in the front nodded, just once. Daniel breathed easier, not because they cheered, but because no one looked away. He said, "You deserve safe adults. I am learning to be one." Word spread, and the council called a final review in the hall. Faces familiar and wary filled the rows. Mrs. Carter said, "We do not promise clean slates, only fair ones." Daniel answered, "I accept the terms." Mr. Ellis cleared his throat. He said, he completed the hours and did them right. Murmurs softened like rain easing. "No." Marcus stood near the exit, eyes narrowed but quiet. Pastor James said, "Let the record show, repair in progress." The chair tapped a gavel. Applause rose, careful and real enough to sting. Daniel bowed his head, not in victory, but in relief. Outside, the storm had finally broken, and the street smelled of wet asphalt. Emma stepped beside him, hands in her pockets. She said, "I heard about the hours." Daniel nodded, afraid to breathe too loud. She said, "You kept saying it out loud." He answered, "I will keep saying it until it's boring." A small smile ghosted across her face and vanished. She handed him a spare house key, the old one he had kept long after it fit nothing. She said, "This one works." He closed his hand over it, feeling the smallest click inside his chest. Days later, Daniel hung the once-hidden diploma on a nail above his desk. He said, not as a trophy, but as a receipt. The room was quiet, the clock gentle. On his phone, a text from Emma read, "Dinner at 7. Don't be late." He whispered, "I won't." He slid the exoneration letter into a drawer and left the key on the table where he could see it. He thought of the hall, the cautious clapping, the promises signed in ink and sweat. He straightened his shoulders and locked the door behind him. Second chances aren't free. I paid in full.